Tonight I want to talk about karma. Our theme for this ongo, as I mentioned earlier, is karma and crisis. And for part of this time, I specifically want to talk about collective karma. I puzzled over whether or not to talk about this or to share what I decided that I'm going to share tonight. Um, I was stuck on the idea, just my idea, that if I'm giving the talk, I ought to be confident in what I'm talking about. But I have to be honest with you and tell you that I'm not. And when I decided to go ahead with that, it felt like a nice opportunity or a little opening up. Karma is one of those terms that, like the word Zen, has entered our popular cultural lexicon and has a certain meaning that may or may not be precise. What goes around comes around, man. Um, Kind of the popular expression of that, I guess. Um, but there's a lot more to it than that, and perhaps a lot less. Over the last few get-togethers that we've had, uh, Kyoto Sensei has given a wonderful gift talking about karma fairly recently, reminding us, sort of classically or from the teachings, what this is. Reminding us that karma in Buddhism means action, means taking action, and what results from that action, and how do we approach that action. And the action actually can include what we do with our bodies, what we do with our words or our language, and what we do with our thoughts. And those can all create karma. It's also the perspective that things that occurred to us in the past affect us now. And the past could be our lifetime, or depending on how you look at it and what your perspective on this is, it could be before that. Another thing that I don't know about. Nancy Baker reminds us that when we're sitting zazen, as we were just doing, what she says is we're adhering to the precepts, we're keeping the precepts. But another way you could say that is when we're sitting zazen, we're not creating karma. I think. I think we could say that. But most of my life, I'm not sitting zazen. I'm interacting with my body and my words and my thoughts with the world that I encounter and the people that I'm in relationship with. And sometimes I do okay, and sometimes I make a mess of it. I noted something else that Yoda Sensei said. He said, or maybe paraphrasing, everything that has happened to me, I created. Maybe remember that when we get to discussion. I'd be interested to know what you feel about that, what your perspective on that everything that happened to you, you created. In a way, this is a gift. It blesses us with that complete responsibility, which frees us from blame, acting the victim, or complaining. I do a hefty amount of the latter. But the things that happen to me that I don't like, I take it on faith that I created them. But as I started out, I'm unsure about all of this. I'm unsure about karma. I can't see it clearly, I don't think. I can't touch it. I can't show it to you, I think. And I can't prove that it exists. But I believe that I do feel it. When I cause suffering, I unquestionably feel it. And it's not a thought, and it's not a guilty conscience. It's something somatic. It's in there. And near as I can tell, it stays. Mean things that I did decades and decades ago are still in there. But as I began kind of, wondering whether I should admit to not knowing about this so much, I had to recall what we refer to as the three essentials of Zen, of our practice: great faith, great doubt, and great determination. And I don't want to get off topic here, but reminding myself of that great doubt is part of this. I relaxed a little bit and gave myself permission to admit to you that I'm just a little unsure about karma. But I've got great determination to stick with it. So stick with it with me, if you will. I have faith in what I've been taught about karma. And maybe by kind of going into this realm of faith and doubt and determination, it's a good reminder for all of us that in this Zen practice, we don't blindly take things on faith. We investigate. We don't just write it down and then repeat the words. We really dig into it, and maybe we doubt, but with faith that we keep going and that our minds are open and these things can reveal themselves to us. So I have faith in what I've been taught, and I also have these questions or doubts about karma, and that gives me permission, and I'm determined to stick to it, like I said. I mentioned earlier that part of what I wanted to share tonight is that it's okay not to be certain, not to know. In fact, I tend to feel that it's more than okay, but that it's essential. These mysteries are unknowable. In the spirit of our Ongo theme, crisis and karma, I find myself wondering about collective karma. And when we get to discussion, I'd also like to hear from you if you have thoughts about this, and I'll get into it here just a little bit. When Sensei introduced this theme, uh, well, I'll get to that in a minute. It, we we know about generational trauma if we're in the psychological fields or areas. We know about generational trauma among Jewish people or descendants of those that we enslaved or native people and others. Who knows? Perhaps as an Irish Catholic, 3 generations removed, I may have some of this. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think there is collective karma. I think it's something that is really that is really acting. That's really energetic. But I haven't found very much written about it. I scoured about and found very little. So that made me wonder, what others, what teachers' perspective on this is. But I think we can see collective karma uh, in the U.S. We have a long, I want to avoid making this too political, but we have a long and deep legacy of violence and cruelty and genocide and oppression. And there's no doubt from talking to people, the pain of this clearly resides in those people who have been victims and their predecessors, and back and back and back. But can we also see this generational trauma, or perhaps let's call it karma, collective karma? Can we also see it in those who may have connections to the perpetrators or have directly been perpetrators? There's something afoot here. There's a strong movement in our culture these days among certain segments of our demographic to erase the history of Black enslavement or Native genocide or Japanese internment or torching Chinatowns and more. Makes people uncomfortable. Don't teach the children that. It makes them uncomfortable. That makes me wonder about this generational trauma. It makes me wonder about collective karma. So when Sensei talks about karma and crisis, I immediately go to the crises that we're facing today here in the US and around the world. By nature and by scope, that must reflect collective karma. And here's something I'd love to hear from you about when we talk. You and I are complicit in the extra-legal murders of Venezuelan fishermen or traffickers or whoever they are, we don't know. And in the racist terror perpetrated on brown people by ICE. That's a provocative thought. I can't imagine that among us, some of us are not reacting to that notion. So what do we do about that? So like I said, I looked around to try to find some support for these thoughts or these questions and found very little. And the little I did find came more from the Vajrayana. Um, there's a quote here. I may shorten it a little bit, but the Venerable Thubten Chodron said, individual karma is the karma that we create ourselves, and collective karma is karma that we create, but together with a group. For example, all of us came here for a particular purpose tonight, and we're practicing the Dharma, so we create karma together in the sense of practicing the Dharma together. And so that kind of enhances all of our individual karma. If you're in the military, then you have the karma there, the collective karma of people gathered together for a certain purpose. If you're at a football game, you create some kind of collective karma with people gathered there for a purpose. Understanding this asks us to be mindful and discriminating in terms of which groups we decide to join. Because when we are part of a group and we agree with the purpose of the group, then we accumulate the deeds that anybody in the group does for that purpose. Not making out exactly the same karma, but something similar because we have gathered together for that particular purpose. It's very important whenever we're in a group to have a very clear mind ourselves of what groups we're associating with, whether we agree with their purposes, and so on and so forth. And he goes on a bit more, but it kind of gives a little validation to the notion that this is something that somebody believes is real. There's another very, very short thing here from a Lati Rinpoche, again, from the Vajrayana side of things. And the interviewer asks him, what can an individual do to change the karma of the group that he or she belongs to? And Lati Rinpoche answers, you can change all karma through practice. You can persuade the group to adopt pure attitudes and to develop pure practices. A little bit different language than we usually hear in our Zen lineage, but I think we all can hear that. So this commitment to being responsible for the one body in a most profound and disarming way. I am the people being arrested, and I am the arresters. Being responsible for all of what all of us do, and for all of what we collectively have done in the past, it feels enormous to me. It feels perhaps impossible. How can I ever identify all that, let alone hold it once I've found it? But maybe the suffering in our world calls us to engage in this way. Our awakened self naturally feels all of this. We refer to the great bodhisattva of compassion having 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands in order to see and to reach out to help. We intimately feel the Holocaust, especially when we go there. We intimately feel Wounded Knee or Manzanar. Film on TV just today, Latino workers at Pizza Hut being snatched and marched out of the Pizza Hut and disappeared. It's just news, right? But if we're awake to this, we are those victims and we are those ICE thugs. This way of seeing the world and interacting with it is the very core of Zen Peacemaker's work. It's right smack dab in the middle. And I think it's also an expression of collective karma. In our Fusatsu ceremony, and for those that's a new word, this is a ceremony we do quarterly um, where we get together and renew our vows, renew our Buddhist vows. And there's a power in doing this together and saying it out loud. There's an accountability there and a commitment and a real vow. And in that ceremony, we atone for our past karma. There's even part of one of the lines, I'll read it here in a second, where we say, since of old. Now, some of us are older than others, but I sense in that line that since of old refers to something older than my lifetime. But once again, I'm not sure. So in that ceremony, we're atoning for our past karma, both individual and collective, I believe. And we repeat these lines. All the suffering caused by me since of old, on account of my greed, hatred, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. And when we talk about this, we refer to atone as two words, at one. Now I am not separate from all of the things that I've done and the reactions that are coming from having done those things. I'm at one with all of that. As I atone, may love dissolve my fear. May forgiveness dissolve my judgments. May trust dissolve my need to control. May connectedness dissolve my alienation. These words are beautiful and supercharged for me. They're alive, they're energetic. They're all things we can do. It's not something I believe in at all. It's something I can do. So through the practice of being aware of the suffering I've caused, either as an individual or as part of a group of white, straight, post-Christian American men, we've got some baggage there. Facing that suffering squarely, owning it, atoning for it, being one with it, and praying for an end to my fear, my alienation, my need to control everything around me, and my judgment. These are like the practice tools that I think Lati Rinpoche was referring to. How do we deal with this? Well, we practice. It's not magical, I don't think. Maybe it is, but it's very much in our hands and in our hearts and in our speech and in our thoughts. We may still feel the pain of past karma, whether it's individual or collective. In fact, we may feel it all that much more. But in this way, we can begin to heal ourselves and we can begin to heal our world. And our world very much needs us in this way. Thank you for listening and thank you for your practice.